Most men spend their entire lives believing a lie. They believe that if they're kind enough, loyal enough, patient enough, the world will eventually reward them. It won't. In fact, the more available you become, the more people take you for granted. The more you chase approval, the less respect you receive. And the hardest truth of all, many of the people you've sacrificed for would replace you tomorrow, without losing a single night of sleep. Think about that for a moment. Have you ever wondered why some men walk into a room and instantly command respect, while others spend years trying to prove themselves and still remain invisible? It's not luck. It's not talent. And it's definitely not because they're better people. It's because they understand something most men never learn. Value creates power, and power controls the game. 500 years ago, Machiavelli observed a brutal reality of human nature. He watched good men get ignored, he watched loyal men get exploited, and he watched ambitious men destroy themselves chasing acceptance. And he discovered a principle that still governs the world today. People rarely reward intention, they reward usefulness. The moment you become necessary, everything changes. The way people speak to you changes, the opportunities you receive change, the respect you command changes, and the leverage you possess changes. In this video, I'm going to reveal 7 Machiavellian principles that can transform the way people see you, treat you, and value you. Not through manipulation, not through empty confidence, but through strategic power. Because the truth is simple. The game is already being played around you, and the only question is whether you're controlling it or being controlled by it. Number 1. The reality of power and human nature. Let me tell you something most men spend their entire lives refusing to accept. The world does not care about your intentions, it cares about your value. That sounds harsh, maybe even unfair. But look around. How many good men do you know who are exhausted, overlooked, and quietly resentful? Men who always show up, men who always help, men who always sacrifice. Yet somehow they're the ones getting ignored, replaced, and left behind. You know a man like that, maybe you're that man. Maybe you've spent years believing that loyalty would be rewarded, that hard work would eventually be noticed, and that being a good person would somehow guarantee respect. And what happened? Someone louder got promoted, someone more strategic got the opportunity, and someone less deserving got the attention. Meanwhile, you were told to keep working hard. That's the lie. Machiavelli understood something about human nature that most people are too uncomfortable to admit. People don't judge you by what lives inside your heart. They judge you by what they can see. Your results, your status, your influence, your leverage. Nobody sees the nights you stayed awake worrying. Nobody sees the sacrifices you made. And nobody sees the battles you're fighting internally. And the brutal reality: most people don't care enough to look. Think about your workplace. The man who solves problems becomes valuable. The man who creates results becomes respected. And the man who can be replaced becomes invisible. That's how the game works. Not how it should work, but how it actually works. And this is where most men sabotage themselves. They spend years trying to convince people they're good, trying to prove they're loyal, and trying to prove they're trustworthy. But nobody is asking those questions. The question people are silently asking is, what happens if this person disappears tomorrow? Read that again. If you vanished from your job tomorrow, would there be chaos? If you left your social circle, would there be a void? If you walked away from certain relationships, would your absence actually be felt? Or would life continue exactly the same? That's not a comfortable question, but it's the question that determines your real value. Because power does not belong to the nicest man. Power belongs to the necessary man. The man who brings something difficult to replace, the man who solves problems others cannot, and the man whose absence creates consequences. Look at history. The men who shaped kingdoms, companies, industries, and movements were rarely loved by everyone, but they were needed. And need is a form of power far stronger than affection. Affection is optional, but need is not. This doesn't mean becoming ruthless, and it doesn't mean becoming arrogant. It means waking up. It means understanding that the world rewards contribution, not intention. So stop asking why people don't appreciate your sacrifices, and start asking what makes you irreplaceable. Stop trying to be admired for being good, and start becoming impossible to ignore. Because the moment your value becomes undeniable, something strange happens. People start listening differently, they start treating you differently, and they start respecting boundaries they once ignored. Not because they suddenly became better people, but because they finally see your value, and human nature has always respected strength more than potential. Remember this. Weakness hopes to be recognized, value doesn't need recognition. Value forces recognition. Number 2, value is the only currency that matters. Here's a truth most men spend years trying to avoid: the world is constantly measuring you. Not your intentions, not your effort, not your potential, but you. Every conversation, every opportunity, every relationship, and every negotiation carries the same invisible question. What value does this man bring? Most men hate hearing that, because they've been taught a comforting fantasy. They've been told that hard work automatically creates success, that loyalty guarantees rewards, that if they keep their heads down and do the right thing, someone will eventually notice. But look around. How many men are working themselves into the ground while someone else collects the rewards? How many men are giving everything to a company that would replace them within 2 weeks? How many men are sacrificing for people who secretly view them as an option, rather than a priority? This is where reality becomes uncomfortable. Effort alone has almost no market value, results do. A man can spend 16 hours digging a hole, while another man can spend 30 minutes solving a problem. Guess who gets paid more? The world doesn't reward suffering. It rewards usefulness. I learned this lesson watching 2 men at the same company. One was always the first to arrive and the last to leave, and everyone called him hardworking. The other wasn't there nearly as much, but every time a crisis appeared, he solved it. A year later, one received praise, the other received power. That's how the game works. Not because it's fair, but because value creates leverage, and leverage creates freedom. Most men are trapped because they focus on being appreciated instead of being needed. Read that again. Being appreciated feels good, but being needed changes your position. The man who constantly seeks approval becomes dependent on it, while the man who creates undeniable value becomes independent from it. That's why the highest value men rarely chase, they rarely explain themselves, and they rarely beg for recognition. They understand something most people never figure out. The lion doesn't convince the jungle he's dangerous. The jungle already knows. The same applies to value. If you have to constantly tell people how valuable you are, you're probably not. Real value announces itself through consequences. What happens when you leave the room? What happens when you stop answering the phone? What happens when you walk away? If nothing changes, your value was never as high as you believed. And that's not an insult. It's information. Information you can use. Because the beautiful thing about value is that it can be built. Skills can be developed, knowledge can be acquired, influence can be earned, and competence can be mastered. But first, you must stop lying to yourself. Stop measuring yourself by effort, and start measuring yourself by outcomes. Stop asking whether people like you, and start asking whether your absence would create a problem. Because there is a massive difference between being tolerated and being essential. One is forgettable, but the other is powerful. Machiavelli understood that power flows toward scarcity and necessity. The man who possesses what others desperately need never has to beg. He chooses, he decides, and he negotiates from strength. So ask yourself a brutal question. If your value disappeared tomorrow, what would the world lose? If you don't have an answer yet, good. Most men never even ask the question. Now you know where the work begins. Because in the marketplace of life, average men compete for attention, valuable men attract it, and irreplaceable men control it. Number 3. Scarcity is the first law of power. Let me expose one of the biggest mistakes most men make without even realizing it. They think being available makes them valuable. It doesn't, it makes them predictable. And predictable men are rarely respected. Think about your own life. Who gets ignored the most? The man who is always there. The man who answers every text within seconds. The man who cancels his own plans the moment someone calls. The man who never says no. At first, people appreciate him. Then they expect him. Then they take him for granted. Then they forget his value entirely. That's the hidden progression nobody talks about. What is constantly available eventually becomes invisible. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. Powerful men were never accessible to everyone. Not because they were arrogant, because access itself is a form of currency, and anything given away freely loses value. Look at the modern world. A man spends all day checking whether she replied. The moment her notification appears, he responds. Immediately, every time, day after day. What is he communicating without realizing it? Not interest, dependency. Not confidence, availability. Not value, neediness. And here's the uncomfortable part. People can sense desperation long before they consciously recognize it. It's in your timing, your behavior, your willingness to drop everything for their attention. Desperation has a scent, and power runs from it. The opposite is equally true. Scarcity creates curiosity. Curiosity creates attention. Attention creates perceived value. This is why the most respected men are often the least accessible. Not because they're playing games, because they're genuinely occupied building something. Their mission, their business, their body, their future. They don't have unlimited attention to distribute, and people feel that. I once watched two men pursue the same woman. One texted constantly, "Good morning, good afternoon, good night," every thought, every emotion, every insecurity. The other disappeared for hours, sometimes days. Not as a tactic, because his life was actually full. Guess which man she couldn't stop thinking about? The human mind obsesses over uncertainty, not certainty. This doesn't apply only to dating, it applies everywhere. At work, in friendships, in business. The employee who says yes to everything becomes everyone's utility tool. The employee whose time is limited becomes valuable. The friend who tolerates everything gets ignored. The friend with standards gets respected. The man who is available to everyone becomes important to no one. Read that again. Scarcity isn't just about your time, it's about your energy, your attention, your emotional investment. Too many men are giving VIP access to people who haven't earned a general admission ticket. They're pouring effort into people who contribute nothing, listening to problems they didn't create, carrying burdens that aren't theirs, seeking validation from people whose opinions shouldn't matter. And then they wonder why they feel drained. Because every unnecessary investment reduces your value, every weak boundary teaches people how to use you, every tolerated disrespect becomes permission for more. The moment you stop over-explaining yourself, the moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop making yourself available on demand, something strange happens. People begin noticing your absence. Your silence becomes louder than your words. Your attention becomes valuable because it is no longer guaranteed. And that's when the power dynamic shifts, not because you manipulated anyone, because you finally understood a brutal truth about human nature. People value what they might lose. They rarely value what they already own. Remember this, the strongest position in any relationship, negotiation, friendship, or social dynamic belongs to the man who can walk away, stay silent, and remain unshaken. Scarcity is not arrogance. Scarcity is self-respect, and self-respect is where power begins. Number 4. Competence over charisma. Most men are chasing the wrong weapon. They think power comes from being charismatic, from being funny, charming, magnetic. The guy who can walk into a room and make everyone laugh, and for a while, it works. People notice him, people like him, people remember him, but then reality arrives. And reality is where charisma gets tested. Because charisma can get you invited into the room, only competence determines whether you stay there. Watch what happens during a crisis. The charismatic guy talks, the competent guy solves. And when pressure enters the room, people stop caring about personality very quickly. They start looking for capability. This is why so many men peak early. You've seen it before. The guy who was the center of attention in school the guy everybody admired, the smooth talker, the natural salesman, the man who always knew exactly what to say. 10 years later, he's still talking, still selling an image, still living off a reputation built years ago. Because charm without substance eventually expires. Reality always collects its debt. Machiavelli understood something most men never learn: results create authority. Not words, not promises, not appearances, results. Think about the men you truly respect, not the ones you admire from a distance, the ones you trust, the ones you would follow, the ones whose opinion actually matters. What makes them different? It's not their confidence, it's not their social skills, it's the fact that they've proven themselves repeatedly. Competence creates certainty, and certainty creates power. I once knew two men working in the same industry. One was charismatic, everybody loved him. He could talk for hours, sell ideas, build excitement. The other was quiet, reserved, almost invisible. Most people underestimated him. But every time something important broke, guess who everyone called? Not the entertainer, the operator. Not the talker, the producer. Because when outcomes matter, competence becomes impossible to ignore. This is where most men destroy themselves. They become addicted to validation. They want applause before achievement, recognition before results, status before mastery. They spend years polishing the image while neglecting the substance, but image is fragile. Competence is permanent. Nobody can take away a skill you've mastered. Nobody can steal years of experience. Nobody can fake expertise under pressure forever. Sooner or later, the scoreboard exposes everyone. And here's the hidden advantage nobody talks about. Competence doesn't just change how people see you, it changes how you see yourself. The anxious man seeks validation. The competent man seeks execution. The insecure man wonders what people think. The competent man is too busy building. The desperate man chases opportunities. The competent man attracts them. Because deep confidence is never created through compliments. It's created through evidence. Evidence you've collected through thousands of repetitions, thousands of failures, thousands of lessons. That's why truly dangerous men rarely need to announce their value. They know exactly what they're capable of, and that certainty changes how they walk, how they speak, how they negotiate, how they handle pressure. You can feel it, not because they're loud, because they're solid. Remember this: charisma is borrowed power. It depends on other people's emotions. Competence is own power. It exists whether people approve of you or not. So stop trying to impress people with potential. Stop trying to impress people with words. Build something, master something, become exceptional at something. Because in the end, attention follows charisma, but power follows competence. Number 5, emotional detachment. Most men think power is about what you do. It's not. Power is about what you refuse to react to. Read that again. Because hidden inside that sentence is a truth that most people will never understand. Every day, someone is testing your emotional weak points, not openly, subtly. A disrespectful comment, a delayed text, a rejection, a provocation, a challenge to your ego. And what they're really asking is, can I control this man without touching him? Most men fail the test immediately. They get angry, defensive, jealous, needy. They explain themselves when nobody asked. They send the emotional text. They make the emotional phone call. They try to prove a point. And in that moment, they unknowingly surrender power. Machiavelli observed something fascinating about human nature. The easiest man to control is not the weakest, it's the most emotional. Because when someone can predict your reactions, they can manipulate your decisions. Think about your own life. How many mistakes were made because of logic? Very few. Most were emotional. The job you shouldn't have accepted, the relationship you should have left sooner, the argument you regret, the person you trusted despite obvious warning signs, the desperate message you wish you never sent. Almost every major self-inflicted wound begins with an emotional reaction that felt justified in the moment. That's why emotional discipline is so dangerous, not because it makes you cold, but because it makes you difficult to control. I once watched two men face public humiliation. One exploded immediately, started arguing, defending himself, trying to win. The other listened, stayed calm, and said almost nothing. Most people assumed he was weak, but a week later, everyone had forgotten the first man entirely, but they couldn't stop talking about the second. Why? Because composure creates mystery, and mystery creates perceived strength. People expect emotional reactions. They don't expect restraint. That's why calmness unsettles people. It removes their leverage. Here's something most men never notice. When someone insults you and you instantly react, the conversation stops being about them. It becomes about your reaction. The trap worked. The moment your emotions become visible, your focus becomes controllable. And there are people who understand this instinctively: manipulators, attention seekers, drama addicts. They survive by provoking emotional responses: fear, guilt, validation, insecurity. They throw emotional hooks into the water and wait for you to bite. Most men bite every time. The detached man doesn't, not because he feels nothing, but because he understands something deeper. Feelings are information, not instructions. Read that again. Feelings are information, not instructions. You can feel anger without acting on it, feel rejection without chasing, feel jealousy without becoming irrational, and feel pain without surrendering your self-respect. That is power, real power. Not dominance over others, but dominance over yourself. And here's where things become interesting. The more emotionally detached you become, the more emotionally attractive you become. People trust calmness, they respect composure, and they follow certainty. When chaos enters the room, everyone instinctively looks for the man who remains steady, the man who isn't rattled, the man who isn't seeking validation, the man who isn't negotiating with his emotions every 5 minutes. That man becomes the leader without asking for permission. So the next time life tries to provoke you, pause, observe, say less. Feel everything internally, but reveal very little externally, because every emotional reaction is a negotiation of power, and the man who controls his emotions controls far more than his feelings. He controls the frame, he controls the interaction, and eventually, he controls the outcome. Number 6. The power of walking away. This is where most men lose the game before it even starts. Not because they're weak or because they're incapable, but because they're afraid to lose. And the man who is afraid to lose is the easiest man in the world to control. Think about it. If you're afraid she'll leave, she has power. If you're afraid of losing the job, they have power. If you're afraid of being rejected, ignored, replaced, or criticized, other people own a piece of your mind. And once someone owns your fear, they influence your behavior. That's the secret nobody says out loud. Control is rarely forced. Most of the time, it's surrendered voluntarily through dependency. Machiavelli understood this better than almost anyone. The strongest rulers weren't the ones desperately protecting every alliance. They were the ones willing to lose one. Because the moment someone realizes you need them more than they need you, the balance of power shifts immediately. You can watch this happen in real time. A man enters a relationship determined not to lose her. At first, everything seems fine. Then he starts tolerating things he would never have accepted before: small disrespect, small lies, small manipulations. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to test his boundaries, and every time he stays silent, every time he accepts it, every time he tells himself it's not a big deal, he's sending a message, not to her, to himself. My fear is stronger than my standards. And that's where the prison begins. Most prisons don't have bars. They have attachments. The relationship you're afraid to leave, the friendship that drains you, the job that slowly destroys your self-respect, the social circle where you're constantly performing for approval. People call it loyalty, but sometimes it's just fear wearing a respectable disguise. Here's the brutal reality. Everyone can feel desperation. Everyone. Your boss feels it. Women feel it. Friends feel it. The world feels it. You don't even have to say anything. It leaks through your behavior, through your hesitation, through your willingness to tolerate what you know you shouldn't. And the uncomfortable truth is that people often treat you according to the standards you enforce, not the standards you claim to have. That's why walking away is so powerful. Not because it hurts them, because it frees you. I once watched two men negotiate for the exact same opportunity. One desperately needed it, the other wanted it but didn't need it. Guess who had all the leverage? The second man. Why? Because he could leave. The willingness to walk away creates a strange kind of authority. You stop negotiating from fear, you stop speaking from scarcity. You stop accepting crumbs because you're terrified of having nothing. And people sense it immediately. The man who can leave becomes difficult to manipulate. The man who can leave becomes difficult to pressure. The man who can leave becomes difficult to control. That's why the most powerful phrase in any negotiation is often the one never spoken. No. Not the emotional no, not the angry no, the calm no, the detached no, the no that comes from knowing your worth. But here's the part most men don't want to hear. Walking away only works when you're genuinely willing to lose. Not pretend, not bluff, actually lose. Because people can sense the difference. They can feel conviction the same way they can smell desperation. And when they realize you're serious, something changes. Suddenly your boundaries matter. Suddenly your time matters. Suddenly your time matters. Suddenly your presence matters. Because people respect what they know they can lose. Remember this, every door you refuse to leave eventually becomes a cage. Every situation you tolerate eventually becomes your standard. And every time you choose self-respect over fear, you reclaim a piece of your power. You're not walking away from them. You're walking away from the version of yourself that believed he had no choice. Number 7. Reputation is currency. Most men spend years trying to build money, but very few spend time building reputation. That's a mistake, because money can disappear overnight. Reputation follows you everywhere, into rooms you've never entered, into conversations you'll never hear, into opportunities you'll never know existed. And here's the uncomfortable truth. People often decide how much respect you deserve before they ever meet you, based entirely on what they've heard. Machiavelli understood this. He knew that power wasn't only about what you were, it was about what people believed you were. That's why reputation is one of the most valuable assets a man can possess, and one of the easiest to destroy. Let me ask you something. Have you ever met a man whose reputation arrived before he did? Before he entered the room, everyone already knew his name. Maybe they respected him, maybe they feared him, maybe they trusted him, but the point is they already had a perception. That's power. Now think about the opposite. The man known for excuses, broken promises, drama, weakness under pressure. Everyone knows that man too, and nobody trusts him with anything important. This is why reputation is currency. Every interaction is either making a deposit or a withdrawal. Every promise kept, deposit. Every promise broken, withdrawal. Every moment of integrity, deposit. Every act of weakness disguised as convenience, withdrawal. And eventually, the account reflects the man. Here's where most people get it wrong. They think reputation is built through image. It isn't. It's built through patterns. People don't trust what you say. They trust what you repeatedly do. A man who keeps his word 10 times becomes trustworthy, but a man who breaks it once creates doubt. That's how fragile this game is. Years to build, minutes to destroy. I've seen men ruin decades of credibility because they wanted a short-term reward, a lie, a betrayal, a moment of weakness, a shortcut nobody was supposed to discover until they did. And once trust breaks, people never see you exactly the same again. They may forgive, but they rarely forget. This is why intelligent men protect their reputation like a king protects his kingdom, not out of vanity, but out of strategy, because reputation creates leverage before you even speak. When people believe you're competent, opportunities appear. When people believe you're reliable, responsibility follows. And when people believe you're dangerous to underestimate, respect arrives automatically. Notice something. The strongest men rarely need to announce their value, as their reputation does it for them long before they open their mouths. But reputation isn't only about what you do, it's also about who you stand beside. Look carefully at a man's circle. You'll often see his future. If he's surrounded by chaos, excuses, weakness, gossip, and mediocrity, eventually that smell attaches itself to him, whether it's fair or not. Human nature judges by association. Always has, always will. And here's the final layer most men never consider. Your reputation isn't really what others think about you. It's what they expect from you. That's the difference. When your name creates expectations of strength, competence, discipline, and reliability, you've built something incredibly powerful. A reputation that works while you sleep, a reputation that opens doors before you knock, a reputation that creates opportunities before you ask. So ask yourself honestly, when people hear your name, what story enters their mind? Because whether you realize it or not, a story already exists. The question is whether you're writing it, or allowing someone else to write it for you. Remember this: respect is earned in public, but reputation is built in private. Guard it like gold, because once lost, it costs far more to rebuild than it ever did to create. So here we are. You now know the rules most men spend their entire lives violating, not because they're stupid, but because they're conditioned. Conditioned to believe that being nice is enough, that loyalty guarantees respect, that hard work automatically creates success, that if they keep sacrificing, keep giving, keep waiting, eventually the world will reward them. But you've seen the truth now, and once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Look back at your life for a moment. How many times did you overgive and get overlooked? How many times did you stay loyal to people who would have replaced you without hesitation? How many times did you tolerate disrespect because you were afraid of losing someone? How many times did you silence yourself to keep the peace? That's not weakness. It's conditioning. The problem is that most men never wake up from it. They spend decades trapped inside a script they didn't write, working harder, giving more, asking for less, and wondering why they never feel respected. Meanwhile, another man enters the room. He's not louder, he's not necessarily smarter, and he's not even more talented, but he understands power. He understands value, he understands scarcity, he understands emotional control. And because he understands the game begins working for him. This is the part nobody talks about. The world is constantly testing men. Every day, every interaction, every relationship, every negotiation, every opportunity. The test is always the same. Can you be manipulated? Can you be pressured? Can you be bought? Can you be controlled? Can your emotions be used against you? Can your fear be exploited? Most men fail these tests without even realizing they're being tested. That's why they stay stuck. But something changes when you begin applying these principles. People feel it, not because you announce it, but because your behavior changes. You stop chasing, you stop explaining yourself, you stop begging for validation, you stop tolerating what insults your self-respect. And suddenly, the same people who ignored you begin paying attention. The same people who took you for granted begin respecting boundaries, and the same people who overlooked your value begin noticing your absence. Not because they changed, but because you did. Because power isn't something you demand. It's something you project. Quietly, consistently, relentlessly. Machiavelli understood this over 500 years ago. Most people rejected his lessons because they wanted comfort instead of truth. They wanted to believe the world rewards intentions, but the world rewards outcomes. They wanted to believe everyone plays fair, but human nature has never played fair. They wanted to believe power was evil, when in reality, power is simply the ability to avoid being controlled by others. And now you have a choice. You can close this video and return to the same patterns that kept you invisible, or you can begin building a version of yourself that commands respect without asking for it. A man whose value is undeniable, a man whose emotions are disciplined, a man who can walk away, a man who cannot be manipulated by approval, fear, loneliness, or pressure. Because that man operates differently, that man negotiates differently, that man lives differently, and eventually, that man wins differently. The game is already being played around you. And the only question is whether you're finally willing to see it. If this video opened your eyes, hit the like button. Subscribe and join us, because this is only the beginning. And before you go, drop the affirmation that hit you hardest today in the comments. I want to know which lesson exposed a truth you've been avoiding. Remember this, the world rarely gives power to men who need it. It gives power to men who no longer need permission to take responsibility for their own lives. Now stop watching, start applying, and let the results speak for you.